Hello and welcome to Flames of War for the Win.
Hello everyone, it's good to be back.
Yes, this is the episode that we've entitled 10 Questions Answered.
Yeah.
Yes, because we can't remember which number of episode this is, so...
It's been too quick, it's been going
We
so
don't
well.
care. We don't care. We're not counting. Are
No.
you? So, as you will know, myself and Dave competed in the European GT for Flames of War. Considering this show is all about Flames of War,
You'd hope so, wouldn't
probably
you?
didn't need to add that bit.
that's-
But we came, we saw, we even kicked a little bit of ass.
Little tiny bit,
Yeah.
but it was
To be
enough.
fair, I didn't kick much ass at all, but I had an amazing time. So in this episode, we're going to talk about, just the tournament experience.
Mm-hmm.
The community have given us 10 really probing, excellent questions.
Probing.
We'll answer those too. So, let's start off with the results.
Yes.
Actually, I want to start with something else before we get
Okay,
to the results.
okay.
Although we can hold that for a little bit
Okay.
longer. Okay, this, as you know, was my first ever tournament. Not only for Flames of War, but for anything, because I just was never a tournament player. Somebody asked, I believe in one of the comments, they were asking, why was that your first tournament? Had you had an experience or something that had put you off tournaments? And I thought about this, about why I was so reluctant to get involved in tournaments. And I've got to put it down to, I was a little bit, for me, with always enjoying the narrative of a game and stuff like that so much, I always thought that at tournaments, all my models just turned into counters. Do you know what I mean?
It sucks the life out of it.
They would start to lose the narrative, and they would just become gaming pieces.
Yes.
Essentially. My main, we've witnessed a couple of tournaments. I remember my first experience of a tournament was right back just before Beasts of War ever launched. We went down to a tournament, a Warhammer fantasy tournament, down in Dublin, and filmed at it.
Right.
So this was it. We were as raw and as red as could be. We just went, or as green as can be, and we just went down and we filmed at it. We didn't compete in it. We just filmed on it. And the number of bad-tempered
I was going to say,
individuals.
Warhammer tournament.
It was.
There's blood.
Yeah, it was bad-tempered. There was people shouting at each other. I'd watched a game with interest where a guy from Greece had come in. I think he won it, to be fair. And he spent maybe 40 minutes just deploying every dwarf right at the very back of the board. And just basically was trying to kill the time, of the game and stuff like that. And I was just, to be fair, that probably did put me off tournaments quite a lot.
That'll put you off life. That one.
So, but clearly that's not enough to completely put me off a tournament. But for me, the tournament scene was never that high on my radar. Obviously, knew it existed. We've ran shows for daily tips on 40k and all sorts of things where we've been discussing kind of slightly more cheesy kind of counter-esque tactics.
Aspects of it,
yeah,
yes,
where you would treat them more as a counter than as an actual narrative device.
A living thing.
But I've got to say, I had a wonderful experience. The Flames,
Yes.
this Flames of War tournament was absolutely fabulous. The people that I played, at least, were gracious, helpful, generous, and most importantly, had a great sense of humor.
Yes.
And I think that made such an amazing difference to me to
I'd
be
add
able to do
forgiving
that.
as well.
Yeah, forgiving as well. They were tolerant.
Tolerance. That's I think the overall umbrella word would be they were tolerant.
So we each played 5 games.
We did.
My first game was against a cracking guy called Tim, who by this stage I was bricking it. To be fair, I was sitting in my car at 6 o'clock in the morning outside the venue, still painting my army.
I've yet to see the picture that was
Somebody,
taken, but I
somebody
want
out there
to
has
see
a
it.
picture of this, where they've caught me painting my army in the car.
And lovely it looks as well.
Oh, well, Joe, considering they're all stone grey, dead zombie Germans, I think it's all right. It's not the most colourful of armies. Considering, in my head when I initially envisaged these guys, they were going to have banners up to here hanging off.
Yeah.
I may still get there.
We'll
I
get
may
there.
still
We
get
will.
there. That first game was great. My objective for the tournament was to try and not come last if I could. That was I really would have. I would have felt like I'd achieved something if I didn't come last. Okay. And secondly, the way the scoring works, for me to lose, which I had counted on losing, a 6-1 loss was the worst loss that I could get. It would mean that he had taken the objective, I'd killed stuff of mine, and I had killed no platoons of his. I'd maybe hurt one guy or something.
That's
so,
it, yeah.
so my other objective was, regardless of what happens, try to kill something so as I didn't lose 6-1. I thought, that should be quite doable. And then I discovered that there was an additional rule that if your opponent had 9 platoons, you had to kill 2.
2, because he ignored the first one.
Yes. At which point my face dropped again. So it was like, right, back to this.
Yeah.
So the first game was very interesting for me because it was, I started to learn deployment. Deployment, I suppose, was my big lesson from game number 1. One of the key mistakes that I made was I didn't realize that my anti-air needs to be close and needs to be line of sight. I kind of knew it needed to be line of sight, but I expected my opponents to be uber aggressive. Most of my opponents weren't uber aggressive. They were actually really cautious and methodical with it. So as the whole tournament progressed, I started to become less aggressive because I realized that it was a path to nowhere.
Yeah, you get into a mindset, don't you?
Yeah, and I started to realize that that aggression, and game 3 is a prime example of that. That aggression doesn't pay off. There's a time where fortune favors the brave, but that's different from just hoofing everything forward. Yeah. So in the first game, I was expecting aggression towards me, even though it was a kind of just a straight off fight. So the other thing that I did was I made an error where I deployed my anti-air, these little guys here, behind a hill instead of on top of the hill. So they had a very reduced arc of fire and arc of visibility. That was a horrendous mistake that I made because my 88s are actually quite effective and served me well in later games when I realized what I was supposed to do with them. But I had remembered this old tip of how all newbies get their armies and plant them on top of hills. And then whenever I saw the hills, I thought, I'm not going to be stupid enough to put my stuff on a hill. Now I realize, get your artillery. Well, your artillery doesn't so much matter where it's at, so long as it's 4 inches away from a building, so they can fire over the top of it. Because yes, I almost made the mistake of planting it right behind buildings, thinking. So, but definitely the ACAC, I started to really focus on how I could get it strong arcs of fire. The difficulty of it being is it kind of needed to be within 16 inches or so before it started to get really effective. So game 1 was great. I had a reasonable chance of even kind of winning it in a fluky kind of a way. Tim was very gracious and helped me to talk me through the steps. The other thing that I learned is that my Tiger, although an interesting model and quite scary, was very easily overcome because he just put smoke on it every turn. And 2 things happened. Either I had to move it, in which case its rate of fire just dropped to 1. Even though in that game, it's tank aces. At the start of the game, you get to roll a dice for your Tiger, which gives it a special ability. And it had the ability to shoot 3 shots instead of 2.
Doesn't matter if you're moving it.
It didn't matter if I'm moving it, it went down to rate of fire 1. So that smoke effectively kind of neutralized the tiger. The other thing, and I will say this is a tip for anybody getting into Flames of War, I didn't bring any smoke counters or anything with me because I never thought of it. But those guys did. And what they had was like square sheets of like cotton gauze.
Yes, I've yet to steal them from work. I will be.
Keep me in mind.
Yep.
Keep me in mind. Square sheets of cotton gauze. But what happened was he put it down over my tiger, and then of course in my turn I'm surveying the battlefield,
Forgot it was there.
and I forgot the tiger was there. So the smoke not only worked from the point of view of
The game
neutralizing it, it meant I couldn't see the tiger either. So I forgot it was there, and I had left it stationary that turn just so as I could fire it, and I didn't get the chance. The other thing was structure. I learned a lot about structure of the game. When you turn up first with your opponent, you have a discussion about the terrain. What do you consider each terrain piece and stuff like that?
A must.
You then did all the roll-off, did all the setup. And then the actual structure of the turn. Remembering to roll for my aircraft, because I believe in one critical turn where I actually forgot to roll for my aircraft. Now, my aircraft was very hard to get in. I needed a 5 to get him in, but if I'd got him in, I might have been able to make a difference with him. So, especially in the last turn. So it's remembering to do that at the start of the turn. And most importantly for me, remembering the bloody Stormtrooper move at the end of the turn, which I kept forgetting during that first game. I've got to admit, though, that through the rest of the tournament, I did learn my lesson. And that was one of the things about tournaments.
It's a hard knock lesson, isn't it?
Yeah.
You see, it's like it gets implanted into your brain, though, doesn't it? You learn, I forgot that. I'm going to remember that now.
Yeah.
You're going to have to, or you're going to lose.
Anyway, we go into great detail on the kind of like little after action reports. So if you're a backstager, or if you would consider joining backstage is what keeps the lights on, it pays the bills and keeps all this rolling. If you'd consider joining backstage, we have those AARs already recorded just after the game.
They were highly entertaining as well.
He gets drunk.
Not my proudest moment.
We will append the first one to the end of this video where we're talking about it. But rather than going into too much details, I want to talk about the results. So my ambition was not to come last, not to get whitewashed. And I fulfilled both. I got 4 5-2s.
Brilliant.
And there were some very difficult games in there. We'll probably discuss them as we're going through the questions. And I won my last game. And I won it by a 6-1. So I did. To be fair, the guy that I was playing, Jim Miller, was a total gentleman. And again, he was a very tolerant guy where, I would ask him, would you consider me out of your line of sight and stuff like that there. And he was a very, very gracious guy, and it was great. And I only beat him through a fluke, as I'll discuss in a minute during this, where he had a veteran squad.
Oh, yes, of course, yes.
In a cornfield in the middle of the table with the objective sitting beside it. And I thought to myself, well, that's it. That's game over. Because I hadn't been able to do anything to any veteran squads the entire game because I had no recon. And I'll discuss that whenever we come to what would you change. So in this instance, I did the only thing that I thought I could do, and that was just bring all my artillery down on it. And I managed to range in early in the game. I think with turn 1, maybe I was able to range in on it. And then once I'd ranged in on it, I was able to bombard him every turn. And I got one lucky turn where I got a ton of hits. And poor Jim rolled more 1s than I've ever seen in my life. Half of them came off.
Oh.
He took a morale test. He rolled another 1. The whole platoon came off.
And that's when you kind of start feeling sorry for the guy, don't you? You just think, oh, I wish that weren't me. I'm so glad that wasn't me.
Yeah, to be fair, at that point, all I was thinking was, I smell blood.
I could do this.
I think I can deal with pretty much. I don't know what else he's bringing out on the table, because this is another weakness that I have, is that I didn't recognize the armies that it was playing, so I didn't immediately know the kind of tactics and stuff that they would be employing.
That comes from
And people would hand me their army list, and I looking down at it going, Shit, there was no point in you doing that.
Yeah.
You know, and they wanted to know what I had, and I lifted my little box up and said, "That's what I have there. Look in there, all them bits and pieces." So, so yeah, I won that final game, and it was great. It was nice to finally see the lessons that I had been learning up until that point coming into play. And I've got to say, I'm quite proud of myself because every game I made mistakes, but I don't believe I ever made the same mistakes twice in a game. So game 2 was different mistakes from game 1.
Well, that's how
game 3 was a set of different mistakes again. And
you'll keep making mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah.
That's it. But as long as you go, right, I haven't done that one again.
Yeah.
I've learned that one. You tick that one off.
Dave, how did your results go?
Well, I'll go with the good stuff first. I won 2. One was a 6-1, complete thrashing, and the other one was a 5-3. Yes,
5-3.
Yes, which is a lot more of a struggle, but it was not better.
That sounds like quite a tight game, actually. A 5-3.
I'll tell you what happens in a minute. I did actually lose 1-6-1.
And you lost 1-6-1. What happened to you there?
Another really great guy. We was talking all the day before. He takes another British Army, 11th Armoured, but it was more of I would call it an infantry company, but it's classed as a motorised one. More on the questions on that later. But he was able to get his. I deployed my objective in the wrong place.
Ah.
So going back to what you said about deploying, I would say even deploying an objective is, if you do that wrong, then you've already given yourself a harder time. If I'd placed it there instead of there, because there was a river running around, so I had to get over the river.
You had to get over the river. Oh, right. Yeah.
If I'd moved it on the other side, it would have spread out his forces as well. But he was able to clump in a corner.
Right.
And kind of wait me out.
So if this was the table,
Yep.
Where was his objective?
His objective was here.
Here.
Back in the forest.
Yep.
And my objective I placed here.
Ah, and then there was a river running across there.
Like an idiot. So he just went, I'll put my 2 platoons of infantry there. Come at me, bro.
Well, I've got to admit, I never actually made that mistake because
that is what I don't think I've made it before.
Yeah.
I will blame alcohol.
Was this your game 3? Was it?
No, it was game 4.
Oh, it was game 4. Oh, the hangover game. Okay, right.
Yeah, you know the Hunger Games.
Yes.
This is the hangover game. For me, so.
Well, that's interesting, and there's a valuable tip because I used this. Anytime my opponent put down an objective and I had an opportunity to put an objective in their side of the table, I always pretty much went as far the other direction as I could to try and force them to spread it.
Any other game, I would have done the same. If I put it in the forest, and if I put it in the cornfield, the way the game went, I think I could have won the game.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't bring all he brought into the field. I actually destroyed.
Yeah.
So if I had rolled my tanks up with my scout cars into that area, and he wouldn't have been able to get across because the river would have held him back as well. That's the problem. I mean, so that was it. Always place your objective in somewhere that's going to be advantageous to you. And then he brought his 6-pounders up, which are by far one of the best units in the game, I think. For multi-purpose, 3 shots a turn, anti-tank 11, just tore through my army.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the one. That's the only one I lost 6-1 though. All the others were 5-2s, 4-3s, or whatever.
Well, ultimately, I came 12th from the bottom, I believe. So I actually finished in just above the bottom 12th, or I was in that 12th. Which for me, to be fair, I kind of felt like I won the tournament when I walked out that night. I was so pleased.
The way the points go, you actually scored 1 less point than I did.
I got 14 points in total.
I got 15, even with my 2 wins. I only got 15 points. Because you, throughout the weekend, were not losing those 6-1s.
Well, that was it, and that I didn't realise it obviously after the first game or 2. But then somebody had said to me, if you can keep that up, you're going to do quite well because some people, for whatever reason, will be being beat 6-1. Yep. And if you can keep that up, you'll keep accumulating points, and it'll bring you up a bit. So.
Pro tip: if you're going to lose, kill everything.
Yes, this was another major takeaway for me. Was in one game I faced it was like a German list from hell. It was a Finnish guy that was running it. He was a fabulous guy. It had a bunch of, were they Jagdpanthers in them? Or yeah? What do you call them?
That's the
Jagdpanthers?
guy I beat.
Yeah, you beat him.
Yeah, that's the other one I beat.
Oh,
But you can tell how
I had a horrendous time trying to do that.
I could not penetrate one of those tanks. I never killed one.
I did. I killed.
You got through. I
killed
couldn't get through the armor.
2, I believe, or 3. I managed to get a 5-2 out of it anyway.
Yeah.
But I was going for the objective. He was outflanking me, so kind of causing me to split my attention. So although I was going for the objective, I was kind of, I was in this awful place of attrition where he had veteran troops dug into their foxholes, which meant I was left in this place that I had tigers there, I had stugs there, and I had a machine gun platoon there. And all they could do was they needed to roll 6s, followed by 6s, and then he'd get a 3+ save.
Yeah.
And then it was 6s, followed by 6s, and he'd get a 3+ save. And obviously I wasn't rolling as many 6s as what I would like. I couldn't understand why I was in that position, that it was so hard to do it. It wasn't until the following day that I learned about recon units where 5s suddenly would have counted, because I rolled bucket loads of 5s. And then they called out 20 minutes left, and I thought,
that's it. Yeah.
what am I going to do? I'm going to go for it. And I pushed forward. It killed my tiger. It killed most of my troops. It killed my stugs. And then I realized I've done the wrong thing here. I never stood a chance to try and get this objective. But what do I need to do to make sure I don't get whitewashed? Because I'm going to get whitewashed here, and my objective wasn't to do that. What do I need to do? And then I realized I've done the wrong thing here. I've been so focused on this objective when really there comes a time for players like me, maybe not for the top players, they could probably think they're going to win every game. But for players like me, there comes a time when I have to accept there are games that I will have no chance ever of winning.
There comes a time in a man's life.
So I realized I'm going to have to start killing stuff.
Yeah.
And this guy, again, had 9 units.
Yep.
Which meant I had to kill 2 platoons, or sorry, 9 platoons. I had to kill 2 platoons in order for me to get that one to make it a 5-2. So my artillery came to my rescue because the Jagdpanthers, which are a beautiful tank, and I'm considering taking them.
They are so good.
But their armor's not so good, and their armor's not great on the top.
No, it's not good at all.
So what I managed to do was to kill them with my artillery, which was very risky because I could have just wasted artillery shots, but I did actually manage to do it.
Yeah, when you pull it off, it's a good feeling, isn't it? I was able to beat him by bailing him out on the objective. I only bailed out his tank, but he didn't remount it, and I held the objective at the end of the turn. So, but it was only for a fluke. If I hadn't have bailed that guy's tank out, I would have probably lost the game.
Well,
very hard to beat.
I think we'll move on to the questions, because the questions are going to answer a lot anyway. So Dave, question number 1. What was your best performing unit?
None.
None?
I can't say there was an outstanding unit in my army.
Yeah?
I really cannot. If I had to say what got the most kills, probably the Fireflies. If I had to say what was the best tool, it would be my recon.
Yeah.
My little Daimlers. But I cannot say there was something that I went, that is what won me the game. I cannot say that with the army list I took. No.
Yeah.
But recon and the Fireflies were quite good.
For me, it's a difficult one. I had success with my aircraft. My aircraft actually killed maybe 5 or 6 tanks during the course of the competition. In fact, on day 2, I took my flying tank and I replaced him with my Nazi flying saucer. So we'll get you a picture of that. So that raised some smiles on the day.
Did it kill more as a saucer?
It did kill more as a saucer. The saucer had its effect, and it managed to kill some stuff.
Oh, there you go.
I would say my most effective unit by far was only effective because it wasn't nerfed the way a lot of my other units were, and that would have been my artillery. My artillery performed as it was intended to perform.
Yeah.
my machine gun, my veteran machine gunners did nothing. My Stugs did okay. They did their job. In fact, one of them seized the objective at the last minute for me. So the speed of the Stugs was much more appreciated than the slow and purposeful moves of the Tiger. But their problem was, because I had no recon, anytime I came up against veteran troops,
which was mainly the whole
weekend.
Yeah.
Anytime I come up against troops, they were veteran and dug in.
Yeah.
It meant that they were highly ineffective, so they just weren't able to do. In fact, it was so bad that on game 5, I had again an opportunity to go maybe a 4-3 or a 5-3, but in order to do that, there was a little jeep that I had to kill. It was in a forest, and I had 2 Stugs full of tank riders.
They're almost impossible to kill, those jeeps.
Onto the jeep,
yeah.
in the forest. Unloaded all my machine gun fire. I think it was like 4 shots each that they got. Nothing. So yeah, for me it was artillery. Was the main best performing unit.
They are good.
Although the 88s were very good whenever they were able to get within range, because although they're anti-air, I didn't actually face a lot of aircraft. In fact, I don't believe I faced any aircraft in any of the lists that I actually ended up fighting.
That will come up in a question later on, I think.
Yeah, it was. I faced maybe 2 little kind of light aircraft that were just spotters, so they were more of a recon thing.
AOPs, yeah, definitely, yes.
So I killed one of them, no problem at all. What it was best at, though, was dealing with tanks.
Yes.
It was very good at killing tanks. So. Next up, number 2. Did you have any dough moments?
I think the dough moment for me was putting the objective in the river.
Yeah.
I think that didn't come from a playing point of view, but it came from why did I just lose? I lost that game for me.
Yeah.
I gave him that one. Yeah. So yeah, putting the objective down wrong was my dull moment.
For me, my dough moment was, well, I had 2 dough moments. I had one where I dropped pretty much half my army off the table in a box, and it all went smash right across the floor. So now's a good opportunity to give you my rundown of hot tips of what to take to a tournament with you. In 1, get yourself a tray, because lifting it in and out of Battlefront bags was a total
nightmare.
Pain. So getting some kind of a tray to make it easy to move things around, absolute must. I used this box. However, the problem I had with this box was when I lifted enough units out of here, the weight of here made it go whop.
Isaac Newton, we salute you.
Yes. Number 2, take super glue.
Yes.
It's an absolute must.
Yes.
Especially for me, who's clumsy and keeps dropping models. And you have to repair them.
My half track exploded as well when I just put it down on the table and the track popped off. So even I had to repair it.
Number 3, the mini rulebook was a godsend. It was an absolute godsend. It was much, much more convenient to have that when I considering I had to also carry that.
Yes.
The information in this is great. But if I could wave my magic wand
and make it small
and make it that size, I would have been in heaven.
Yes. Well, I think we
However, I think that's probably a bit much to ask. The other thing that I did was I have seen people printing out the tournament rule packs or rule sets. They printed them out at A5 and binded them together. So they were able to have them with their rule book, just all kind of binded together, and it was a great idea. Whereas mine kind of all ended up in separate pages and became more and more difficult to dig through.
I stapled mine, but even that wasn't that was a bodge job in the end as well.
I kept them separate, primarily so as I could mark pages in my book. But it wasn't great, because sooner or later I'd need the one that was marking a page. I'd take it out and then I'd lose my page. Next up, obviously a template. This one here was the only one that I could use until my opponent on one particular game, Jim Miller, was able to combine
his artillery.
Yeah. And he must have brought out a template about 4 foot long,
Yeah.
Dave.
It's the
I've never seen a template.
was
It was
it-
just a big long
Was it the long,
template.
thin one?
Yeah, long
Yes.
thin. It was what 18 feet long. So he was killing stuff on other people's tables. My little box was invaluable. It worked really well for keeping all my little bits and pieces together. So I've got to say, I liked it before, but for tournament play, I liked it much, much better. What I did though was I have a whole stack of dice and stuff like that from the original box sets that we've been working from.
Yes.
I got rid of those. I got myself a nice themed set of dice and tokens, which are beautiful, but the dice has rolled an awful lot of 1s and 2s. So I'm not sure what to do with that, whether to melt them down or pour vodka over them
Jimmy
or
Miller
something.
said he was going to burn his into like a new themed sculpture. He's just going to melt them all.
So yeah, there's a final tip, which worked well for me as a newbie. I had my army list printed out. During my test games with Dave, I was taking notes on my army list of key things to remember, like firepower checks, 1, 2 bail out, 3, 4, 5, 6 dead. I'm confident motivation tests are on 4s.
Yep.
Veteran skill tests are on 3+. All stuff that, to be fair, is in the rule book in this kind of in the back pages. But it was nice for me just to pull out just the bits and pieces of information that applied to me.
Yeah, because you could race through lots of things and not find what you needed.
Because again, I'd get a little bit panicky, and I don't like holding up opponents and stuff like that. So having those kinds of questions that opponents would ask you, things that I would add for next time, command distances. I think everything was 8 because I'm a veteran, so I believe it was all 8, but I would probably still write that down next to everything. And there's probably 1 or 2 others, I just can't remember at the moment, but definitely having an army list with your own little notes and stuff like that on it.
Yeah, even I did that. Even I wrote something.
Was very handy. My other dough moment for actual tactics, losing my patience when there was like 20 minutes to go.
It's scary, isn't it, when you get down to the wire?
I shouldn't have lost my patience. I should have realized earlier that forget about the objective and go for easier targets to try and kill some stuff off.
No, find out pick your targets.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I have one more dough moment, and that was whenever my tiger was underneath that piece of gauze and I forgot to even use it, even though I had left it there specifically to shoot it. Yeah. So, okay. Another question, Dave.
Yep.
Did your units and lists generally perform as expected, or did you totally under/overestimate the value of some unit in the tournament environment?
Yes. My flyer.
Yeah?
I think I saw it on the table twice.
Was that it?
Yep.
They are hard to get on. Were you starting the way I was with 3 dice?
5.
Oh, you were starting with 5 dice?
I paid a lot of money, well, not money, a lot of points for something that I didn't see. So I really was planning, and I even built my army with the RAF controller to get the airplane on, to get targets knocked out before I even got there. I don't think I killed one thing with it all weekend. So I overestimated that, and I was very disappointed in it.
And that's a lesson that we have learned for tournaments is
Minimise
random. Yeah,
minimise random. Mm-hmm. If you need to roll something, I mean, reserves are different because that's part of the game.
Yeah.
But if you've inbuilt something into your army that is random, in a tournament environment, that is not a good thing to do. I was talking to some guys about the naval fire gun support. Mm-hmm. The big thing in Overlord was you could get different naval batteries from. Every one of them said no. I hate it.
Because you could roll and it may not even turn up.
Never come on. And like you said about smoke, they have only got 1 observer on the table. Mm-hmm. Put smoke on that, the observer can't see.
Oh, and then...
That's 300 points. Up to.
Yeah.
That... Especially there was a guy in the air landing. He was like this all going. I hate this. So he took it out. So minimise randomness.
I'd agree with that. My flyer My flyer, to be fair, was quite effective. You know, I killed a few tanks and stuff with it. But I could probably have killed just as many tanks.
That's 115 points.
Yeah.
That's another, well, it's almost...
Maybe more 88s.
Yeah, definitely. Make them at 5-3.
Yeah.
At least.
For me, not only the flyer, that's a good one. I hadn't actually considered that about removing the randomness from my army, and that's a very good point for a tournament game. Definitely. It would mean that I wouldn't get to field my flying saucer, which I think would be a crime against humanity. But
for tournaments, when you're trying to get those 5-2 wins,
yeah,
more than table and more.
I would say I probably overestimated my tiger. To be fair, I know it was on its own. I kind of thought that it would do more. Now, to be fair, it did cause my opponents to kind of obsess about it a little bit. And when they were putting smoke on that, there was a whole lot of the rest of my army that they weren't putting smoke on.
Especially counter battery artilleries, yes.
However, in saying that,
for a target,
if I lost my tiger and my flyer, I could probably get 2 Jagdpanthers in that have the same gun as the tiger, so we're going to cause them the same amount of obsessing, and a recon unit, which would allow my 5s and 6s to come into play, and probably either more artillery or more 88, or even more veteran units, veteran machine gunners or troops, to try and secure a flank for me. Because one of the things that I found about the troops, especially ones the Americans had with lots of bazookas, is that I was really reluctant to assault them with my tanks. Because I knew that they would just go in on the side armor. Not too bad for the stugs with the skirts, the shirts on them, because they get an additional save. But for the tiger, it decimated it.
It would really affect it quite easily, yes.
So yeah, it's as a new player, I just wasn't expecting that. Next up, we have Warren. As you were new to the game and not really a history enthusiast, how easy was it to gauge the strengths and weaknesses of the opposing lists, or did you decide to go for the throat no matter what the opponent brought to the table to see what happens? Excellent question.
That is a good question. I think that could be put to both of us. Actually,
yes.
I think.
Yeah, you have a go at that first.
Well,
then.
You kind of learn as you go on. I mean, even I'm learning, because I've not faced every single list in the world. And even some that I've faced, I was like, I don't actually know what's going to be best for what situation. I think in that, when you're just beginning to start, the best idea is to play as much as you can and vary the forces that you face. Because you say you're going to face Germans, but it could come in this kind of flavour. It could come in someone with street barricades. Well, block all your line of sight and you can't do anything about it. I don't think you can gauge strength and weaknesses just by looking at an army.
Yeah.
I don't think you can. I think you can see, oh well, there's only 6 bases there, so that might be all right. But on the day, you couldn't kill any of them.
I don't know. You know, maybe if we can get some of the top players on this show, Dave, at some point, right? Well, we're going to reach out to them and see if we can get like the winners or the runners up onto the show to talk to us. Maybe they can look at an opponent's army and immediately gauge strengths, weaknesses. You know what the opponent's likely to do with it. I think it would take an awful long time for me to get to that point.
I certainly don't. I'm not.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's for me, you're absolutely right. I've little historical kind of interest. Have I gained a little bit? Maybe I have. We'll have to wait and see. But there were people handing me army lists. I didn't understand them. There were people then showing me their armies, and I was looking at the paint jobs. You know, going, they're lovely.
Yeah,
you know, it's they're beautiful. There's probably some core golden rules. You know, always use artillery against troops. Never put your tanks in against troops. always put your troops in before your tanks. I don't even know if they're right. There's probably core things that we'll be able to pick up that what it means that whenever somebody lays out an army, you kind of have a basic structure of what you've got to try.
I think because the game is so flowing as well, what you plan beforehand normally goes out the window anyway by the time you roll the first dice.
So it's an excellent one. To be fair, yes, I did just go for the throat. For every single game except for game 4 and 5. So the entire first day was spent going for the throat because I felt what I lack in strategic knowledge of what I'm looking at, I'll try to make up with whatever bits of tactics I can bring to bear, and by being aggressive and trying to get them on the back foot.
That probably won you those points.
I think that is what won me those points, to be fair, because if I had been too... Timid, yeah. If I'd been too timid, each of those 3 players would have rolled over me. So I do think that the aggression... And it wasn't aggression as in but as in just getting stuck in. I think my opponents got good games out of it.
Oh,
I think they enjoyed it.
Yes.
I think that the fact that it was touch and go and then they snatched a win. They probably were never in any danger of anything but snatching a win. But I'm sure that made them feel like it was a much more enjoyable game than if I had just sat back and not did anything. So, yeah, if you're a newbie, go for it. It worked for me. By the next day, I was still being aggressive. You know, the game 4, I castled up all on one side of the board to put everything onto the objective because I was given a tip. If you're going for an objective, don't get distracted. Put every single thing you can on it. So I castled everything.
But that doesn't suit this army.
Into 1.5 feet. So
and it doesn't suit you either.
No. And that was a game that was very, very hard fought. Yeah. And it was a game that I had no chance of actually winning, like game 3.
I think another thing is to learn your style.
Yeah.
Play a few games and go, oh, I'm that kind of guy. Mm-hmm. I think once you learn yourself, you will learn to win.
Master Dave.
Master Dave. Yeah, but I think that's a thing to learn.
Dave?
Yes.
What was your favourite list to play against and why?
I've got 2. Mm-hmm. I've got the first guy I played was a great guy called Roger. And we've been talking about Irish Guards ever since. Because he actually helped write the book, Market Garden.
Did he?
Yes, so but he bought this fortified company. And I was talking about, I bet I faced a fortified company. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to take my dozer blade. It wasn't it was just street barricades. They blocked line of sight. They gained cover from being behind it. You shot and moved. Mm-hmm. It completely neutered what I was trying to do because I was a very mobile force. Mm-hmm. I just thought it was a fun thing to look at as well.
I'd love to see that.
It looked beautiful as well. The paint job, all the turned over tanks, all the barricades, all the barbed wire. It was great to look at. It was really fun to play against as well. So that was my Rogers Fortified Company was my favourite. Close second was the Jag Panther list. Just because it was just like no idea.
Yeah, that
no idea.
That was the same for me. It was the list that completely blew my mind.
Yeah.
Every other game, I looked at it and I was able to generally tactically assess what I was going to try and do, ish. So even though I didn't know what he was going to do and I didn't really understand what I was looking at, I did have a plan that I was going to do. That Jag Panther list, it just left me going, and Jag Panthers are going to make it into my list as a result, you know, because just he had so many of them.
They were platoons on their own.
Yes, each one was a platoon on its own.
Which really helped him because he made his army 9 platoons, which is just crazy. But brilliant list. And
next up, in the tournament, did you play against any infantry armies? And if so, which are harder to play against, infantry or non-infantry? I didn't see any completely infantry armies.
I didn't see a complete infantry army either.
I
saw ones with infantry in it.
Yeah. We did play against infantry.
Yeah, there was one. The 11th Armoured was mainly infantry, the one I lost against.
Yeah.
Because that had... Yeah, that was an infantry list. Yes, it was. Because it had core lists of 2 infantry blocks. Mm-hmm. It was categorised as a motorised company because that's what Battlefront has called it. But it really is an infantry company with backed up by guns and tanks. Yeah, so I played against one. Yeah. But I think that was the only one.
And did you find it harder to play against?
I think you find people harder to play against.
Yeah, than the lists. Yeah, I would agree.
I think you can do fantastic things with an infantry list, but that same guy will not know how to run an all-armoured list. Or a smaller infantry like commando list.
I don't think Flames of War is the type of game where you win in the meta. I think you gain a lot in the meta game. In other words, designing your army list, but that'll not win you a tournament. So it's not like, you know, in 40k we've all discussed these, you know, tournament-winning lists, and I don't even think it applies in 40k, to be fair. But I certainly don't think it applies in Flames of War because
you can't, what I would call net deck a list.
No.
You can't go to take whatever the guy took to win it with. If I took it, I probably would do really rubbish with it.
Yeah.
I think it's players, not lists, that make Flames of War lists hard. That's what I would say. So go with what you want.
I think the game itself, because of the game has beautiful intricacies. It's not that the game's hard to play. It's not. I've played 3 games. I took a list that I thought was cool because I have a thing for tank riders because I think they're fucking nutters. And I have a thing for a Nazi flying saucer, so I took a plane in it.
Yeah.
And I took a King Tiger because a King Tiger is the coolest tanks of all the tanks.
Yeah.
Hardly tournament ideas there that went to build my list.
No.
But I was able to take it to a tournament, and I was able to learn my weaknesses, and then by the end, I was able to take into account the weaknesses I had, and actually do something with it. You know, I came 12th from the bottom. That's not bad.
No,
So
saying that, I don't know who came bottom, but I think whoever took the bottom list, if you gave that to a more, or just a different player, it might have just been him on the weekend.
He's probably just rolling bad dice most of the weekend. Yeah.
I think if we tried to take whatever the bottom ranked list was and played with it, I don't think it will come bottom again.
Yeah.
So that you can't say no. I couldn't say.
If you're, I think I find infantry difficult to deal with.
Infantry are very hard to kill.
Yes. So if your question is in that sense, yes, I find when I come up against the infantry parts of a list, I find them very, very difficult to deal with.
But when they're hard to kill, they're not doing anything.
True.
They're not shooting. They're not moving. So they are completely static. Once they start moving, you can kill them. So it comes down to tactics.
Okay, next up. How did you guys feel as relative newbies to the game, and how the more experienced guys treated you? Did they treat you as newbies or as real opponents? Well, I'll answer that as the only real true newbie to the thing. They were great. They treated me with tolerance, I think fairly, allowed me to catch mistakes before they became mistakes. I don't think it hurt them in any sense of doing that, but it meant that it made the game flow. And what I found was I had some brilliant tactical discussions with my opponents. Now, they weren't giving away what they were going to do in return, but I had some brilliant tactical discussions with my opponents. And sometimes I was able just to ask, look, mate, if I send all these troops into these tanks, what's going to happen? And he'll go, you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
In which case I went, thank you. Okay, over to this side of the table.
Moving on.
Yeah, so it was the 5 people I played against were absolutely fantastic. You know, I couldn't have asked for a better bunch of opponents. No. The tolerance was great. So I only wish all tournaments were like that. I suspect a lot of them are. Let's see if we can get a drive going to make sure they're all like that. Second to last, can we both publish our army lists, and what changes would you do if you were to go to another tournament? Well, first, I think we're definitely going to go to another tournament.
Yes, most definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Secondly, yes, I will publish our lists. We will find a way of getting them to you guys. They'll be beneath this video on the Beasts of War site.
Well, my one's already published.
Is yours already published?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, then I will
redo it for people who are...
Yeah, we'll publish it. We'll publish it again just underneath this video.
Yep, sure.
What would I change? Very loosely, I need to get recon into my army for it to become effective. So, unfortunately, for a tournament, if I wanted to actually have an army that was more effective for winning, I'd probably lose the Tiger, put in 2 Jag Panthers in there. I would try and get some recon in on top of that. I would be running out of points, so I might lose the tank riders a little bit to get recon in and possibly keep my aircraft in because it was fun to play. There is that side of it. I did enjoy playing it. I enjoyed the look on my opponent's face every time I was rolling for it and the relief on their face every time I failed.
Yeah.
You know, so it's it adds that little bit of yes, it's random for you, but it's random for them as well, and that helped put them on the back foot because it was the only device that I had where I could turn my opponent round that sometimes he had to look behind him. Do you know what I mean? So from that point of view, I quite liked having it in. But recon, an absolute must. I've got to get some recon into this army. Dave?
Well, I actually went out after the tournament because I imagined this question would come up. And I was like, well, what do I need in my army? Well, I need 6 platoons.
Mm-hmm. At least.
At least. If you've got a list without 6 platoons, don't. Mm-hmm. Just don't. Get to 6. Because if you do not, again, you're handing your opponent a really nice wedge of happiness, to be honest.
Because in a game where you can only deploy half, you could only deploy 2.
And that was so neutering.
Mm-hmm.
Things to come out for me, definitely the Tiffies, I'm afraid. The Typhoon has come out. Mm-hmm. I've knocked down my sextons. I've taken out the mobile element of the artillery. Mm-hmm. So I found that the mobile part of the artillery was not a factor. Are
you going to replace them with 6-pounders or something?
I'm going to replace them with the normal 25-pounders, just dug in like yours.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I'm totally right. I took out the motor platoon as well because these guys, I don't even know how we even won a war on the back of archers. Because as soon as I put down the motor platoon, my opponent would go, that's a platoon I don't need to worry about. Bang, 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 dead men. So I've made it into a much bigger lorried rifle platoon, and I might even stick them on the back of the tanks.
Really?
As transport, not tank riders.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so Typhoon's out, Sexton's out, motor infantry out, and I've gone to 6 platoons with a carrier platoon of 6-pounders. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And I've made the 25-pounders static. Yeah. But it comes to 6 platoons now. And I'm much happier.
Well, guys, before we go, there is a bonus question that came in. Dave, what uniform will we see next?
I don't know, honestly. I mean...
You might see me in uniform next.
What would you guys like to see me in?
No, don't go there.
I only do maid outfits for backstages. Depending if I change my army list, there might be another uniform coming out. Yeah. Definitely.
Well, guys, at that, we will leave you with that. We will see you in the next episode of Flames of War for the Win. And to feed us out, here's a first of our after-action reports where Dave had started the beer. Enjoy, guys, and we'll see you again soon. So we are here at the European Grand Tournament.
At last.
Yep, for Flames of War. We have just had our first battle. Yes. Before that, I've been up since 6 a.m. painting my army. Hang my head in shame. Apparently there's a photograph out there somebody has taken of me painting the army in the car parked outside here at 7 a.m. this morning.
That'll be on Crime Stoppers later on.
Yeah, they'll be saying, who is this? Yeah. So we've had our first game.
We have, yes.
Right, who did you play, or what army did you play?
I played a really good fortification list. Yes, I know, guys. I actually played one.
A fortification list?
Barricades. Hidden behind it. Picked me off. Lovely guy called Roger.
A lovely guy called Roger.
Brilliant guy. trounced. I got one of his platoons. Wow.
Well, while Dave was being Rogered, I was I was played by another Irish guard list, but not like yours.
Oh, really?
No, this one had more. It didn't have very much in the way of anti-air, so I was safe that way.
Yeah.
But we played a game where you couldn't bring reserves on until turn 3.
Yeah, that really stuffed me. That really did, yeah.
And I deployed really, really badly. So I had anti-air effectively deployed with a tiny line of sight because I was afraid to put them on a hill. But now I'm not afraid to put them on a hill.
Get them in that
so I'm going to get them up high.
Dominate
yeah.
you.
But anyway, at one point, he brought on 2 squads, 2 platoons of Shermans and Fireflies. And then that was it. That was my flank.
That was it, gone.
Decimated. Yeah. However, I got a 5-2.
Oh, brilliant.
So for a first game, and if I had made one lucky save, on that side of the table where I'd been decimated, and I had made a few, so all my luck had run out there.
Right, yeah.
I actually would have won the game. But I've got to admit, I wouldn't have won it through any skill of my own.
Well, that's it.
Tim, who I was playing, an absolute gentleman, was helping me and not obviously telling me how to do the tactics and stuff like that, but he helped remind me and helped talk me through some of the more complex things like assaults.
I will say, this is not, as tournaments go, this is the most friendly environment I've ever been to.
It's great.
It's great. Everyone's giving their advice.
I can't wait to after action report number 3 when he's had another few of these in. So, but yeah, it's great. So my big takeaways from game 1 is anti-air and all that stuff I need to get up with good line of sight, and don't be afraid of losing it because it's important to get shots off. 2, my King Tiger is not effective if I let him put smoke on it, and my opponent puts smoke on it every single turn. So I've got to try and hop it in and out of somewhere where he can't see it. Number 3, don't forget your stormtrooper move. I forgot it every time, and it probably would have made a difference. Number 4, when I'm going into assault, I'm going to assault with my machine gun teams first, then my Stugs. Yeah. Because in this one, I still did okay, but I assaulted with Stugs and left my machine gun teams behind.
Huge gap.
Yeah, and it wasn't great. Yeah. So, but all in all, I'm having a fabulous time.
We are both fabulous. It's been very good so far. We'll see that later.
So, there we go. That's after action report number 1.